More now on the growing problems in Venezuela, and joining us here is Octavio Pescador.
Yes, Professor Pescador is the founding research associate of UCLA's Paulo Freire Institute. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Our correspondent, our colleague Paul, has just laid out just how bad it is in Venezuela right now for people. We heard the stats about inflation and where it could go according to the IMF this year. Is the situation in Venezuela purely a function of the fall in the oil price, or are we looking at something more here as the cause, i.e. President Maduro's handling of the situation?
Both. You know, the economic situation, the global fall in the price of oil has hurt tremendously. That was their main source of revenue. Obviously, that if you don't have cash on hand, you can't do much. Secondly, the way that things have been administered now that opposition has grown, and particularly the loss of legislature, obviously does not help in terms of the decision making. You know, there are some restrictions and some controls they've imposed to try to curb and attenuate the situation, but they've triggered exactly the opposite results.
So I think the argument here, though, is that the other countries which are dependent upon oil as their main income, they still have toilet paper, they still have food on the shelves. I mean, they still have medicine in the hospital. This is a country which has tried to manipulate the price point, supply and demand, and the market forces. And eventually, it's been a series of bad economic decisions, which started with Chavez, continued by Maduro, which has got the country to this point.
It's interesting because, you know, there are two versions of the story. The government says, well, the prices of items that are basic necessities are controlled because, folks, we want to make sure that people have access to them. And others say, well, you're arguing that it's a black market and folks who are conspiring to destabilize your country that are creating this particular circumstance. Frankly, there's not been any shred of evidence yet solid in terms of either of the camps. Both of them are arguing directly via media and then physically in the streets. Sadly, there's not been that much reporting on the violence on the streets, but there is violence. Attenuated, obviously, you know, the criminality has gone up, but now for people, you know, scarcity is the #1 problem.
As you look at the situation, as you look down the road, is this a country heading towards defaulting on its debt?
Not at the moment, but the Chinese have withheld the second tier of loans, you know, and obviously if the price of oil continues in the 40s, low 40s, there's not going to be promising any good future for them. What really matters is whether the referendum will become a reality, because
this is the
military
to give
context. The opposition has organized a movement to recall President Maduro, and there are two things that are very important to highlight. One is that the military to date expressed that they will not repress anybody, whether that happens or not. They will not act on behalf of the state, and that is very good because we in Latin America have had very terrible experiences. So if the country decides to move in a different direction, at least we have that particular certainty.
If Venezuela collapses, then it's a real possibility. What are the ramifications for the region?
Well, if you look at the region, the core left that was holding the system, or the contestatory system to the Bretton Woods, the Washington Consensus as it's called, has been dismantled. Save for Dilma Rousseff, that is also on the way to impeachment. Argentina has now Macri. Obviously, there's, some noise around Macri because of the Panama leaks, but within the margins, they're stable and they're not super left as they're not. But Ecuador is, in the center left, but is not as adamant as it was a few years ago. So in a sense, the situation has stabilized in terms of the animosity towards the United States.
So let me ask you this. While there may be, according to some polls, 2/3 calling for President Maduro to be ousted out of office, I'm struck by the fact that you don't believe Chavismo is dead in Venezuela.
No, well, because there were many things that Chavez was able to do, and Maduro continued in terms of, for instance, hunger. According to the United Nations, not the Chavistas, about 20% of the folks who are in extreme hunger are no longer in that situation. Medicine, for instance, and other social programs. But you need money, you need resources to fund that. And without resources, you can't continue.
So this is about Maduro as opposed to, more broadly speaking, the policies of Chavismo.
Well, Maduro has been in terms of the way he handled the animosity, not very experienced. He doesn't have the charisma that Chavez had. He doesn't have the military record and the loyalty of the armed forces in the same way or control that Chavez had. And frankly, the context globally does not help him to carry out the processes as Chavez did.
This is a very big discussion, and we spend more time, but we'll have to leave it there, Octavia. But thank you so much for coming in and giving us your perspective on that. Obviously, some very difficult times.
Yeah.
Ahead for the people in Venezuela.
Appreciate it.